Now, I have an additional privilege today that I don't usually have of reading the citation for the honorary degree recipient. The highest honor the Senate of a university can confer upon an individual is an honorary doctorate. At the University of Manitoba, the criteria include distinguished achievement in scholarship, the arts, or public service. Our honorary graduate this afternoon is Mr. Micheal O'Siadhail. Mr. O'Siadhail, one of Ireland's most prolific and widely read contemporary poets, sees himself as a sculptor. Instead of stone or clay, he revels in the complexity and endless creativity of language. Through the mastery of his art, Mr. O'Siadhail inspires his readers to explore the human experience in profound and imaginative ways as only he can. With his unique offering of emotion and intellect, Mr. O'Siadhail has written 16 collections of poetry navigating themes as varied as friendship, language, trust, history, and grief. His compelling language and intuitive grasp of universal truths have made him a poet treasured in Ireland and in many other parts of the world. As a testament to his stature, consider that a former president of Ireland, Ms. Mary McAleese, wrote in support of his nomination for the honorary degree he's receiving today, and with eloquence, she remarked how his poetry heals and helps, amuses and bemuses, proves and reveals, vindicates and raises the heart. In Mr. O'Siadhail's complex and emotional writings, there's evidence of the experiences, places, and individuals who played a significant role in his journey. His parents, his middle-class Dublin neighborhood, and the Jesuit boarding school where, as a teenager, he discovered the world of poetry. It was the perfect medium for a sensitive young individual to express himself in earnest. He felt things deeply and knew then he wanted to be a poet. His earliest work was inspired by great artists like Shakespeare and Dante. He went on to earn a Master of Letters from Trinity College Dublin, which is where he also began his career as an academic in linguistics. He created a textbook called Learning Irish that remains the standard introductory course on the topic worldwide. This international scholar, who speaks 10 languages, feels equally at home in Norway, Iceland, England, the United States, and Canada. One collection of his poetry, titled Tongues, reflects his truly global perspective. It's well known that when performing a reading on the road, he prefers to speak the language of his hearers. He was invited at one point to Japan to share his poetry, so he learned Japanese. Since publishing his first collection more than 4 decades ago, Mr. O'Siadhail has generously brought his unique insights to students around the world as a visiting professor and writer in residence. His poetry has been lauded for achieving an elevated level of intensity while still being accessible, something he believes in wholeheartedly. He has said he finds inspiration in theater, classical music, and jazz, seeing the intrinsic connection to poetry with its rhythm, alliteration, and rhyme. Passionate about his art, he likens each of his poems to a child he sends off into the world to engage and explore. Mr. O'Siadhail's influential poems have received many accolades, including the Irish American Cultural Institute Prize for Poetry and the Martin Tunder Prize for Literature. In a culture and country steeped in this art form, Mr. O'Siadhail has claimed his space of one of Ireland's finest poets. Beyond his homeland, the power of his words have inspired us to see the world around us in new, extraordinary ways, and for that we thank him. So, Mr. Chancellor, it is an honor for me to ask on behalf of the Senate of the University of Manitoba that you confer on Micheal O'Siadhail the degree of Doctor of Letters, honoris causa.
By virtue of the authority vested in me as Chancellor of this university, I admit you to the degree Doctor of Letters, honoris causa, with all the rights and privileges thereto appertaining.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chancellor, Mr. President, honoured guests and graduates, or are you still graduates, possibly? Thank you for this great honour. I'm very proud to receive an honorary doctorate from this fine Canadian university, the University of Manitoba, here in Winnipeg. I'll treasure the memory of this occasion. And look, it's fun to get dressed up in a gown and cap like this. And what's even more fun, I'm allowed to keep these as a souvenir of the occasion. But this, for you who are graduating, is a moment of celebration, a moment of achievement, a moment of completion. In some ways, it's both an end and a beginning. Ends are tinged with the sadness of partings, and beginnings are fraught with the anxiety of the unknown. The adventure, the intellectual excitement, the camaraderie of college days comes to a close. And where now does life call you? Some of you, by your choice of study, will fall naturally into the rhythm of things, pick up the beat where others have left off. To you I say, whatever you have chosen, do it with love and perseverance. And never forget why you made your choice. In the noise of every day, you can so easily be overwhelmed by what you do and how you do it. Please don't let the what and the how drown out the why. Remembering why you chose what you do will sustain a passion for your choice. Others of you are still listening for the pulse, not yet quite sure. To you I say, be patient and listen. You'll find the theme and tempo to match your gifts and talents. And when it comes, you'll recognize it and make it your own. Yet others of you, deep down, hear the throb of a desire and wonder if you dare. Is there a vision you've always had, always hoped you'd fulfill, but are afraid because it flies in the face of what society regards as common sense? In the right time of your heart, you know this is how you would flourish. But do you have the nerve to pull it off? I've lived long enough to see people disappointed, resigned, disenchanted, because they simply didn't venture it. It may cost you absolute single-mindedness. It may even mean resisting all types of distractions. But to you I say, fulfill that promise to yourself. Whatever it is, do it, risk it, live it out. The Irish mythic hero Fionn McCool described the finest music of all as the music of what happens. As each of you joins in the music of what happens, I want to remind you simply of two things, and both, I warn you, are deeply countercultural. Firstly, I want to say to you that as Randall Collins, in a book called Sociology of Philosophies, A Global Theory of Intellectual Change, as he has shown, all the great shifts in the history of the world have come about through groups of people, not simply through individuals. For all that our society lauds the individual, the music of what happens best in combos. And secondly, no matter what you choose in life, in accordance with your ability, your gifts and capacity, let it be in service to the world that you have inherited and which ultimately you will leave behind. Sweet dissonance enriches, but a boasting and raucous narcissism destroys the whole ecology of sound. You are the stewards of what you receive and what you will bequeath. You keep the promise of a music you do not own. Now, you've been learning skills, techniques, theories, conventions, modes of thinking in the chambers of this great university. You have been preparing, equipping yourselves, building habits of thought in what for all its size is still a training ground, a rehearsal space, a practice session. Out there in the jazz of life, keep riffing on the generous dreams your student days allowed you to dream. But remember, the greatest dreams demand a subtle interplay of the disciplines you have learned and the freedom to let go. The solos that trust in listening well will shape in concert the music to come. Play meticulously, but dream boldly. I leave you with a short poem about jazz, which tries to catch this rich and double thrust of stringency and venture. At the core of all the jazz's lavish promise, just to keep on playing, to improvise what is. Saxman Keith Donald told me, when the solo moves, it's loose and certain as the promise of loves. I'd know, he said, the true line after one bar, as if trusting one another, we'll play what we are. Those riffs forgone, adornments you had to eschew, the siren's sweetness that wails so deep in you. Between moments endured and moments of the dream, singleness of purpose, utter obedience to a theme. Nothing show off, lean flightiness, grace to soar, shaping and shaped by a promise at the music's core. Thank you.